On behalf of INYAS, it is my pleasure to welcome our chief guest, Professor Ashutosh Sharma, INSA President, all INYAS colleagues present in the hall, and all INYAS colleagues who have joined through INYAS Zoom link, and all participants who have joined through our INYAS YouTube channel. I welcome you all to this very important and interesting topic. For the participants who have joined through INYAS YouTube, let me briefly tell you about INYAS. INYAS stands for Indian National Young Academy of Science, in short called INYAS. INYAS was founded by INSA in 2014. Currently, INYAS is having 150 plus current members and 45 plus alumni members from all over India and from all over disciplines. I also want to mention that our membership is only for 5 years. So that means that every year we induct roughly 20-25 new members, and around the same number become alumni. So this way, Academy will be always having a group of young and dynamic members. In INYAS, our vision is to promote science and education and outreach, networking, and support for young scientists, as well as build scientific temperament among young scientists in the country. We organize many science outreach activities like science camp at the different levels like schools, awareness workshops, skill development workshop at college level, as well as for PhD and postdoc students. We also conduct survey on different scientific issues faced by young researchers and publish them as white paper, and also bring these important outcomes of these surveys and the recommendations to different policymakers for a positive change. We also organize technical symposium to have more networking among early career researchers, aiming to have more interdisciplinary collaboration. One of our events called NetFOS, and the another, as we were discussing, the mid-year technical symposium. We conduct and invite INYAS members and non-INYAS members below 45 years of age for discussing different scientific topics, and then looking for future research collaboration among INYAS and non-INYAS members. So with this, briefly mentioned about INYAS and our mandate. I would also like to introduce our chief guest, though as said by Sugandha, he does not need any introduction in scientific community. Professor Ashutosh Sharma is Institute Chair Professor at IIT Kanpur in Chemical Engineering Department, and currently President INSA. He is also former DST Secretary. He is elected fellow of almost all science and engineering academies in India as well as abroad. He is Bhatnagar awardee, and he has many important publications in high impact journals, in different high repute journals, including the one is PRL. So this is physics journal, highly reputed physics journal, and being from chemical engineering, it was really, motivating for us to see his publications in physical review letters. So with this, I would give the dice back to Sugandha.
Tried our best to give you a glimpse of more activities. So it's good to have them documented. And we have newsletter ready for the release. And I request Professor Ashutosh Sharma to please do the honors. Thank you, everyone. Dr. Rohini and Dr. Priyanka Bajaj have put in a lot of efforts to come up with this newsletter. And please go through this, you'll enjoy. And with this, With this, I invite Professor Ashutosh Sharma to please address the audience.
Greetings to all the young scientists of INYAS, members who have collected here. I'm so happy I recall my association with INYAS first. It started in 2015, just about the time that I joined DST, January 2015. And I so recall that there was a group of people that I had the privilege of meeting there. And they were full of ideas and full of energy. And they said they want to create a young academy of some kind. I don't know whether this young word on academy refers to the age of academy or the age of people, the academy. But either way, it works. Right? Less than a decade now, so we can say, okay, certainly. And then we were brainstorming. I do recall that, of course, Chandra was there then. Okay, at that time, he has now become senior since the dean professor, so he must be senior and gone out of INYAS. But there were, I can recall most of the members who had come there. And then we were discussing about, look, what should something like this be doing? How would it be formed? What would be the charter? How this would operate? What's the structure and processes and architecture of such a organization? And how should it be different from other academies? Of course, that any academy worth its salt, people actually aspire to be a member of that. So it cannot be any different in that particular aspect. And that it does bring some recognition and so on, and which is kind of universal. Now, without passing any judgment, I'd often ask when I became INSA member, I think I was 42, 43 years old, and I used to keep asking myself, what is it that the academies offer? Okay, other than being a club and other than being the fact that, get elected and so on, what is it that we really offer? Of course, in the case of INSA, the answer to me was very clear. When I come to Delhi, I get to stay in their guest house. Okay, so which was certainly, I mean, it's a good incentive, okay, to be a member. But beyond that, there's certainly, and they do stuff, good stuff. So it is in that context that I was asking INYAS as to why they want to have an academy. What is really the motivation and the objective for doing any of this? Of course, the other aspects were a little bit simpler, is saying, look, if you become part of INSA, then it'd be easier to have the money flow problem taken care of. Okay, so, instead of, I remember many people were arguing that, oh, it's not good to be, to be associated with an established academy because our freedom and our identity may be a little bit diluted by that process. And certainly that can happen. It can happen, but I'm glad that, INYAS has not really gone down that path. That, of course, is totally autonomous. It's maintaining its identity and its management and its administration and the activities that are driven by that. So I don't think that there was any problem related to that. And then, of course, if you form another society, if you want, total independence, then there are many problems that come with it as well. And, so unless somebody is like totally now confident and has, the sustainability model in place and everything for it. So I think it happened good, at that time, and I'm so glad to see that this has not just be a club, but club which has diversity. Another point we have discussed is that, look, it must have diversity. But diversity of what? So there is diversity which is related to gender, is related to geography, is related to different kind of institutions. Maybe, this university versus IITs and ISERs and R&D labs and whatever, right? It is, of course, so all of this diversity and of course the subjects and so on. So I'm very clear that, one sees that diversity in India's, one may not see that actually in more mature academies. So I always, thought much about it, and I always say this that dividing people into young and old is actually counterproductive. It doesn't serve any purpose except to bring criticism to the fore, and saying, look, what is it that we can find in this book which is not to our liking? Okay, so that's often happens. So I always say, look, there are two kind of people in this world: the young and the younger. But there are no old people in this world. Okay, and so of course this may be a little bit self-serving when I say that. Okay, but who wants to feel old, anyways? So and I think that this has some operational meaning, and I will come to it, especially for an academy that calls it young. Okay, and so clearly one differentiates it from other academies, right? And it has a meaning, and it also has some meaning which you may not want to bring there. But let us, one should ponder about these things. So now, anyway, when Dhaka said that we want a title, I was thinking like we'll have an interaction session because I don't know what people, want to discuss. But so I would say a few general things which, younger people may have more concern about. So, and then so it's just to get the dialogue. And so the title, I had sometimes seen what do you call the soap opera on the American TV, which is called The Young and the Restless. It's been actually a show, believe it or not, going from 1971 without interruption. So it must be very popular. And all those people who are watching Young and Restless have now become less young and peaceful. Okay, but it's been going since 71. You can imagine there. How many generations actually would have grown up on this soap opera? Why is it called a soap opera? You all know that, right? I mean, the early American TV, they were selling soap and shampoos. Okay, so anything which is like heavy advertising about all these goods, fast-moving consumer goods, they're called soap operas because they are funded by them. So anyhow, here was the young and the restless. So I thought I told Rajan Dhaka that we can. I said of the young and the restless. He just didn't like that title. He just cut it out totally. Then I realized why he's doing that. And he said, oh, I forgot. I was very busy. Right. So I knew why he's not doing that because people think that this is disrespectful, isn't it? I mean, the young and the restless. But I didn't mean so. I then, just to soften the blow a little bit, I said, oh, empowering the young and the restless. Right. So he said, okay, yeah, fine. Yeah, that sounds all right. Empowering is good. Yeah. So I knew exactly what was going on in his mind. So empowering everybody likes, no doubt. So we'll touch upon a little bit about what does it mean to empower, who is empowered, who will empower, what is the mechanism of empowerment. Because since we are talking about this empower thing, we must be very clear in our mind what is it that we are talking about, right? And I have no doubt that many policy documents can be created out of this. I haven't any doubt that many books can be written on it, and papers and everything, right? But if we don't know what is it we are talking about, then perhaps we missed the marks on it. So anyway, I wrote that, look, this title, it is not pandering to somebody, and it is also not patronizing somebody. It's not to be interpreted in that sense. Empowering, when you say empowering, hey, who is this guy to talk about empowering? Right? So that's really patronizing. And this is not the meaning of actually what is it that we want to discuss. And so what is the meaning of this? By who, to who, and by what mechanism? So there are conventional approaches to this problem of empowerment. And they come from the fact that there are, of course, biases, okay, in the society at large. There are biases in the academic community. And the biases, they may be hidden, they may be subconscious, they may be on the surface. And there are the biases about every possible group in the society. And one of those groups happen to be younger people, right? And so you say, look, so how do we address that? So usual answer to addressing these biases of the society is to say, hey, can we do it by policy? Can we do it by schemes? Can we, something like, say, young scientists, everybody talks about young scientists. There are some awards and there are some stuff, there are initiation grants. There are awards for early career researchers. There are, we say, look, in committees that we may have greater representation for the younger people. Because every committee should be balanced, so in terms of, again, like what you see in INYAS, the composition of its members, and why should it be diverse? So it has a different meaning. Because a whole lot of people, without understanding why something should be diverse, they just kind of go as a political slogan. So they say, hey, yeah, that's right. I mean, because it's not right to say anything against it. Okay, so most people, without realizing what they're talking about, they would say yes, inclusion, equity, diversity, and so on. All these keywords that people throw around. They're like interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, out of discipline, transdisciplinary, parallel reality. I don't know, other stuff, but because it sells, basically. But I think it is not. So of course we should have in committees diversity. We should have to create leadership in different groups, whether it is by age, whether it is geography, or what have you, gender. So we need equal amount of leadership, which is distributed across everything. So all of that is, these are conventional ways of addressing empowerment. The problem, the very deep and vexing problem of the empowerment of sections of society. Wherever one feels that there are certain biases and they're not getting their due and they're more limited in their representation and so on. Also, which is all of this is true. So all of this is actually low hanging fruits, and they can indeed be done. But they do not. I mean, they don't bring about what you may call very fundamental differences, fundamental changes, if you would, in the deep seats of consciousness. I mean, for the lack of a better word. So, because a whole lot of this stuff, remember, is not top down. A whole lot of this stuff is actually bottom up. So, which means that the bottom of the pyramid, which is culture, is the issue which really has to be addressed. And of course, the culture cannot be addressed by a scheme. Very limited amount of it can be addressed by scheme. So, the deeper aspect is, I will come to it by quoting actually why I often ask people, undergrads especially, I say, hey, did you learn fluid mechanics, thermodynamics? Nobody understood thermodynamics in their undergraduate course. They say, not really. My teacher was not really so good. I mean, sometimes they say bad teacher. But I point out to them that bad teachers are the only good teachers. Why? Because learning is your business, not teachers. Okay, it's very simple. Where is the responsibility for learning actually lies? It's now the teacher. So you be my guest. If you want to learn, then it provides you the opportunity for self-learning, which is the only learning that there ever will be. Okay, and we all know we are teachers, but we are teachers, and everything that I did in my undergraduate course, I had forgotten that 2 years down the road. Like anytime you start teaching, you have to relearn. And this is the capacity to learn, not the context, which is important. So most people have forgotten that education and learning is their business, it's nobody else's business. And if you can bring this to the fore, saying you are responsible for your life and your learning. If the teacher is bad, it doesn't matter. He gets a cell, he goes home. Okay, he eats good dinner, maybe pizza, maybe good fried pizza, maybe thin crust pizza. Okay, maybe whatever pizza. Why am I thinking pizza? I just had one very good one yesterday in Khan's Market. Khan's Market. And what do you call it? Believe it or not, it's called activated charcoal pizza. My God. So I thought I'm just a sucker for everything good. So I said, this is what I'm going to try. Activated charcoal pizza. So I thought maybe it's fired over activated charcoal. Not really. Actually, it was totally burnt. And it was, the charcoal was actually the pizza. Pizza was charcoal. Anyhow, one lives and runs. So what are the deeper aspects of self? I would say empowerment. We know that these usual mechanisms of empowerment. We all know that. But what about self-empowerment? How do we actually think about that? So just the analogy of a great teacher, and that learning is actually is our business, right? Not teacher's business. And so it's a empowerment, of course, a top-down empowerment, and that's what everybody talks about. What about what is it that we are doing for our empowerment? Okay, so it is something we don't discuss it with. And we say it's somebody else's business to empower me. Okay, which is true. I'm not denying that, but I'm saying parallel. What is the stuff that we do? So of course, that any club like this, INYAS, must have cultivate respect for diversity, for geography, for language, for gender, for food, and all of that. And so I think the success of a club very greatly depends on the cultural seeds that it believes in. Uh, that's kind of integrated in the DNA of that place. Many clubs have failed to do that. So why is it critical? I think for all of us who are sitting here, that look, when we are saying, look, I mean, we don't like certain setup, don't like what, less young people do and stuff like that. Is it we don't like it because we want to be in that place? Or we truly have understood that this is not so good? Right? So actually both of it happens. Actually, more of it happens I've seen in my life. That people are saying, they are no good, right? They are less young people, but they're controlling everything. But really, what I want to do is I grow up very quickly and be like that. Okay. And so this depends on the cultural aspects. And often, I mean, the same thing that I'm criticizing, I'm just criticizing because I really want it. Okay. And I'm just not there, right? But I'm working on it, right? So the reason I'm saying this is that INYAS must not become that kind of club. So a whole lot of clubs actually have in them the seed that people are working very hard to belong to that particular group or club. And for that, whole lot of politics goes on, a whole lot of networking goes on, a whole lot of trying to find some godfather goes on. All of this happens. And that creates a very great deal of distortion in our science. Because people once, we have forgotten that we are here for the excitement of our work. Then, I'm aiming for an award, but only one person will get an award, and the other five who truly deserved it may be passed away because there's only one award, and there may be 10 people, and depending on, the committee or the day when the deliberations were held and all of that, outcome could be different. Okay, there's absolutely no doubt. So there's absolutely no reason to feel rejected or dejected. And also by the flip side of it, you don't need to feel truly greatly elated. Okay, when you get it, because the point is that whole lot of this, whether one gets it or one doesn't get it, is a whole lot of time is toss of coin. Okay, and committees can make mistakes, purposefully or otherwise. All of this happens. People say, hey, it's not fair. They say. I gently point out that the world is not fair, and nobody ever told that world is fair. And anybody who told that who either didn't understand or is a liar. Okay. So this is in the nature of the world to be not fair to everybody's mind. Okay, then what is considered when the person gets the award, he thinks it's fair. He doesn't get it, he says unfair, right? And there would never be any resolution to this paradox because world is not perceived the same with different minds. What is perceived is totally different by different minds. Anyhow, so this is actually especially of relevance when we are younger because there is this sense of rejection, there is this sense of being fair or not fair, and saying, okay, and especially the ambitious people like all of us are here. Okay, so because a select group is already selected in some ways, so it is obvious that they are like okay above average in terms of their achievements and ambition. Now, time and again I've seen in my life this stuff to happen that it leads to complaining, it leads to negativity, it leads to losing faith in the system as it is called the ecosystem nowadays. Everybody keeps saying ecosystem. I don't know what it means, right? But anyhow, and that it takes many years for people to come out. Why is that? Because I think we have not emphasized the right culture from the beginning, right? And somehow we believe that, okay, people will say, hey, but if I don't get Bhatnagar Award, how would I become part of all these committees? If I don't become part of these committees, how would I visit Germany? If I don't visit Germany, how will I have good wine? Or I don't know, something like that, right? All of this goes on, the whole chain, right? But I think we can put a stop to it. and to put a stop to it, that time is now. I mean, it will never happen once you become fellows of INSA. Okay, the what do you call it? The average age of INSA fellowship is 71. I was just reviewing all these statistics now. The age at the time of admittance is 58. Okay. So now, I mean, I'm just pointing out there's nothing wrong with these numbers. They have some meaning, but they also hide something. There's something. So, what is it about diversity I was coming? So, in terms of age, on one side, your experience grows. For most people, it grows. Okay, some people stop to grow. That's okay. But most people, the experiences, the new experiences bring them richer insight into practical things or how to deal with different kind of things. But younger people, they have more energy and the third with the world, right? And so the meaning of diversity is to bring energy and experience together. Now, problem with this is, that people who are less young, they don't recognize experience, the energy as necessarily the only qualification. And similarly, people who are younger, they don't recognize the value of experience. And so therefore there are stereotypes which are related to, these groups. But really, I mean, people are not different. People aren't different. I again cite this as both as an experience and as a joke. That look, when I was younger, I joined IIT Kanpur. There were other people like me. We had a tea club. We have to gossip in a tea club. Otherwise, there's no meaning of tea club. You gossip. What would you gossip about? First, you'll say director is very bad. Then you would say the dean is not doing anything. And what about his head? I mean, he lost his head or something like that, right? Then you would say, and anyway, look at all these guys, the older people, they're doing nothing and they're bossing around us, what is it? So all of this was actually, all of this criticism is not personal. Please remember, every possible group will actually have the same gossip. No matter you are sitting in this IIT or that university, okay, there's nothing personal about it. This is professional, okay, right? But now, you see, now here's a linear translation in time. Okay, so age is linear translation in time. And so when I first came to IIT, I was 16 to do BTech. And then I suddenly realized I woke up, I said, I'm 61. Okay, so the mirror image of 16 to 61, and that's a very short journey. Okay. So now I said, look, now what is it we talk about? Now I get together, with people who are less young, and they are all saying, these youngsters today, they don't know, they don't hear nothing, I mean, what, they're just, life is totally different. We were not like that, weren't we? Right? Okay. But, we were like that because we were complaining and we were, unhappy with certain group of people. And you see, that is a constant in life. So at 61, we're doing the same thing that we were doing at 16, isn't it? I mean, what you complain about is different. Seriously, that complaint, that is a constant factor in life. And there is no escape from it at all. It will do no good actually to tell people, let's see, only other day you were complaining about less young people. Okay. And now you're complaining about younger people. Okay. So how is that possible? I mean, so there are many messages in this particular thing. A very simple thing, which logically is well understood, but emotionally not understood at all. Okay. So logically you say, hey, what? I mean, you couldn't be criticizing your future or your past, isn't it? I mean, so you say, how can you be so critical of your own future and your own past? They don't make any sense, right? But somehow the mind justifies everything and moves on. Okay, so we already know that there was a very compelling psychological study. We say that people do not change their opinion because of data. Okay, now this may come as a surprise to us. We're saying, but of course, everything is data driven, isn't it? It's evidence and data. That's what we believe in science, but not really in your personal life. Okay, so all my biases are basically my own biases, and I feed them every day, and no amount of damn data is going to convince me of it. Okay, let's be very clear about it. Okay, so these are the personal choices that we make, our conditioning and so on. So anyway, my short now about all this complaining negativity, it sucks out a lot of energy. And what is it that we can actually transform into our work? Even my personal failure, it sucks out a lot of energy. So this cannot be a hindrance. And so often in convocation addresses, I would tell people, now you're graduating, get rid of energy vampires. Okay, so because it's a very, I mean, so comforting thought to sit with energy vampires, because they are saying, they are just kind of saying, world is so bad, you can't do nothing here, right? And I know, I'll tell you, there were so many people I know who may have been 10 pointers in IITs, who may have done great work in MIT, Harvard, wherever, right? But they fell to this negativity. They said, "Hey, India in IIT, can you do this work they can do MIT, right? Can you do that? No, no, you can't do that. And I am like so high and mighty that if I can't do that work, I will do nothing. Right? So this is actually a pitfall that happens to the best of us. And I mean, it's such a lost opportunity, such a lost potential of these very bright minds, so to say, right? And what happens? There's nothing more terrible than a bright mind gone wrong, right? So because intelligence is there, but it's just being channeled in negativity, right? Totally full time politics, and and by politics I don't mean I don't mean MP and all that. That's good politics. I mean the the politics that we do every day, right? Saying my neighbor, I should pull him down. This guy I should promote. This guy, all other we all know that, right? So all this stuff is going on all the time. But if we can just we lose them a little bit, and then I think that this brings extra energy to do work. Um, and I know there are people who sit for 3 hours drinking tea every day, tea clubs and all, they flourish all our institutes, right? And after a while, people become like totally, I mean, they lose sensitivity to why are we here? Why are we actually a professor? Why can't I open a pawn shop and earn more money, right? There are no answers to these questions. Of course, one can say, look, it's by default. I have no better choice in my life. Okay, so just become professor or whatever, right? Or scientist, right? That's a one kind of answer. But the people who are alive who say, look, I got some life work to do, right? So we cannot be negative and fully recognizing that the world is negative and is unfair, right? This is so it's very hard, and this is a choice that each one makes as to how we are going to view the world. Okay, when a situation is like this is happening, wars are happening, this is happening, right? How we are going to view the world and how we are going to interact and have intercourse with this world, which is not ideal. Okay, so to say. You always say in the end, you say, look, I didn't make the world or myself, otherwise both would have been more perfect. Okay, but the thing is, there are sometimes I explain to people they are very disappointed and they are really at the verge of quitting and breaking down psychologically, didn't get a big award, they deserved it, no doubt, and everything, or didn't get the promotion, or their boss is not behaving right, and all of this is happening, right? Sometimes I tell them, look, well, it's nothing to do with you, don't take it personally, this is all luck, right? And they think, what is it luck? I mean, you being a scientist, how can you speak about luck? People get very inflamed. Yes. But I have a scientific explanation for luck. Okay, which is you see, luck is the complexity of the world that we do not understand and we do not control. Okay, and this is very scientific. I mean, a three-body problem nonlinear generates chaotic solutions, right? And here we have so many degrees of freedom that we just do not understand. And these degrees of freedom actually involve autonomous actions by discrete consciousness, which are all around us. So we just absolutely not understand how somebody is going to behave in a particular situation and how it is going to actually impact my plans and my future, right? So this is called luck. It is not in the planets that luck. The luck I'm talking about is our inability to control complexity of the world. And I think it's very, very true. So I think, one cannot, we say, look, if I was so good, how come I'm passed over by people who I do not think are as good, and so on. So this leads to rejection, it leads to depression, and so on. So if we didn't put our, faith too much in these kind of externals like awards, rewards, recognition, committees, going abroad, going to Germany, drinking beer, all of that, okay, then, we can totally focus on our work and not be swayed by what somebody is saying, because it can be very discouraging. World on the whole is discouraging. Okay, it is never, expect that somebody is going to come and say good things about you. It's not going to happen. Okay, so again to quote from my experience. So I joined. I was doing some work. With my older colleagues, they were also my teachers. They had good things in mind for me, so they want to mentor me. Somebody would come and say, "Hey, what you're doing is not chemical engineering," and he was very concerned that you're not publishing in these journals, and how you call yourself chemical engineer if you don't do this. So I say, yeah, yeah, yeah. I was perfectly okay. I was never swayed by what anybody says. I say, oh, look, is the right, advice for themselves, but it doesn't work for me. Okay, but you must say that with some humility, right? It's not like, hey, I'm so good that I reject everything. It's not like that. You say everything is good, but it's good for somebody. Okay, and there is a match between that and that somebody, and there's a job for everybody. There's everybody for a job, but not the same job for everybody. Okay. And so sometimes, and this is like joking, sometimes, sees you through. So this person, when he, said like 20 times, he told me that I'm not doing chemical engineering. Then I say, hey, actually I've done in 2 years what you did in 20. He said, what? I said, nothing. So this is something all of us can do in 2 seconds, by the way. And so in the end, actually, a whole lot of this means not very much. So there's no point getting all puffed up, you know, you know. So it is the excitement of day-to-day life which carries us through all of this. And the other thing. So I think I think empowerment actually comes from within us. It comes by group support. I mean, people of similar, aptitude, people of similar aspirations. At the same time, by providing support, providing cooperation rather than competition. While the modern, I mean, we have been successful because as an individual, one could compete and crack exams, and or there's always competition, right? Which is competition has a meaning, but cooperation also has a meaning, right? And we have not fully explored the power of cooperation, and real problems are always solved only by that. Not no matter how bright I am, those this stuff matters only in proving theorems in mathematics. Okay, that may be a very individual centric driven activity, but the rest of the real problems, they require camaraderie, they require understanding, empathy, emotional balance, and robustness in that, in the face of adversity. And all of this is empowerment. So please do not underestimate the value of that empowerment, because no amount of grant which is given to me because I am younger or I am this gender or that will only see me through another 5 years. Okay, and not at the end of it may not be entirely satisfactory. While that is necessary, it may not be sufficient. So and so also building, like ethics, building, resolving conflict of interest. We have introduced tighter norms for conflict of interest in INSA. Wherever I had gone, even DST 2015, that every committee member of every kind has to sign a form saying that now they don't have any conflict of interest, right? And that includes what do you think is the conflict of interest? Of course, your blood relatives, of course, your guru, of course, your PhD student or postdoc, people who have been your research collaborators, have published papers together, even other person in your department, okay, or even a director who's sitting in a committee and evaluating his own people, right? Because we know, I mean, it's not a failing of the director. It is a human failing, which means that we want to promote, our institute. We want to promote our family, our DNA, our whatever, right? So to keep that away, it's good to have a formal conflict of interest norms which are understood by everybody, and so we'll not create a future, which we like. And I mean, 20 years from now, another generation would be sitting here and they are asking the same question. But unless we fix it now, the same problem would perpetuate in the future. So are we, we have to invite these traits. Um, of course, so one of the biases that I talked about is about the age, and people don't always realize that that people who are better connected with the world, which have the energy to connect with the world, they bring something of value, right? So, like I said, I was elected INSA member, something forget now, 42, 43, but we had an enlightened president a year after that, Dr. Raghunath Mashelkar, and he said, "No, you become in the this committee that elects more fellows in engineering sciences." So I was below 45, and I was also selecting the fellows, electing the fellows rather. And so I so remember in that committee, because I was the youngest, everybody else was like where I am now, okay, 60 plus. Um, and so I was bringing some new ideas. I was saying, look, oh, okay, there's a web of science, there are impact factors, there are citations, there are this stuff, all the matrices are there. Maybe you should also look at it. This is a complex issue, by the way. So if you want to debate that sometime about what is the role of matrices versus the role of evaluating quality by other means, the constant tension between subjective and the objective, if you would. Um, this is a very deep philosophical problem. I mean, never been resolved. Some people say God is personal, some say it's impersonal, and there is a fight forever, okay, about this. And there is also a fight forever about how do you select fellows, right? Is it by matrices or is it by evaluating, whatever? And I'm sure you would face the same problem with this, right? So anyhow, being younger, I was saying I was doing all this, and I was arguing for half an hour with people saying we should also look at it and not be totally subjective. Finally, I mean, one of the members of the committee, and half jokingly, he said, "We don't take anybody below 50 seriously, right?" So this is, I mean, I'm saying half jokingly, this is a widespread bias that could be there. In different ways, it manifests in different ways, and so on. Similarly, when we are, there's a deep-seated bias. I mean, it's very cultural. So, for example, that when we talk about a good model of learning in Oriental societies, what is a model? We say we sit at the feet of Guru. But if you go somewhere else, they say, I stand on the shoulders of giants, right? Now, you cannot be sitting at the feet and standing on his shoulders at the same time. Okay, this is little unstable situation. So, how do we actually remedy that? So, it then means that we abandon one of them. Okay, it just means that they have different purpose. If I want to learn the best of what is available, I'm figuratively, metaphorically, I have to sit at the feet of Guru. But when you want to create new knowledge, when you want to see farther than what anybody has seen, then with all the respect, you have to climb their shoulders, right? So it is meant for different things. And if we can understand the value of each one of these things, for example, there's a whole lot of talk about mentorship, for example, and people say, hey, why can't like INSA fellows and INYAS fellows get together? And I don't like to call it mentorship because I mean, people are sensitive about these things, and they say, who the hell is this guy to mentor me? I know more better than him, right, or her, right? So there is a sensitivity which is involved in all of this, and so taking care of the sensitivity, can there be a greater interaction across the ages and across all the different groups that differentiate themselves by certain characteristics? Now, this is very counterproductive actually to interact only with the group which is like yourself, because everything, as we know, everything flows because of gradient, and knowledge is no different. So unless there is a gradient, nothing is given. Okay, nothing is picked up, nothing can be transferred. And the transfer is a two-way street. But to recognize that, you see, I haven't been to chemical engineering conferences pretty much all of my life unless I was receiving an award. This is not to show disrespect to chemical engineering, but this is to say that, look, I would not gain very much by being there. I would rather sit in a conference of history, for example, or archaeology, than to say, oh, I mean, because I know what, it will be very incremental for me. I'm not saying that everybody should do the same thing, But we are saying, look, okay, where is the learning opportunity in all of this? The learning opportunity would be talking to people who are not like yourself at all. So now why we cannot do this? We are not able to do it because of the stuff which is called identity and the psychological security, right? So I mean, I have not really never thought that I cannot talk to a 5-year-old or 95-year-old. Okay, this is not a question at all. Okay, to the mind, right? Whether what is the age, what is the gender, what is the profession? I can tell you, just 2 months ago, I had organized a get together of all the people who were in eighth standard in a little town called Top near Jaipur. So we all eighth standard people. We have been out of touch. So suddenly with Facebook and everything, you get hold of few people who get hold of few more people. People drove all the way, there, and the diversity is amazing. As you go to college, diversity becomes less. But if you go to eighth standard pals or before that, diversity is huge. So in that group, there is a fruit seller, really the street food seller. Another guy is Director General of Police of the same state. But you see, this diversity is so good because, but people are not behaving like that. They are behaving exactly the way they were in the eighth standard, which means that they accept each other, but they would not accept each other if they were out of that social setting, right? The fruit seller will actually not have the courage to talk to Director General of Police, and that guy is going to look down upon him, right? So this is how one negotiates the diversity by by having a mind which is not wedded to the position and profession. Okay, but this is a learning opportunity because what I learned in that one day and how people's life had progressed after eighth standard, and who they were and what they were and how they got there and what are their aspirations and stuff. It was an eye opener. So now you see it is a little bit. I think I should conclude it. I don't know how long it has been. We can discuss forever. The last time I was in a webinar, I asked them politely how much time I have. He said, no, 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 take your time. I said, but we want that. Last time somebody told me that it was 3.5 hours. Okay. And there are two kind of people you cannot take away mic from: poets and professors, right? It's just they like to hear themselves so much. That is so cool. So it is there. I mean, I just throw some ideas. Okay. Let's say when my concept of empowerment is basically what happens at home. Okay, so the empowerment begins at home is a Gandhian approach. It means, Gandhi always said, look, we may get independence. This is really a minor matter. You can drive out your enemy by force or by, satyagraha or whatever. But unless we are going to change, right, this empowerment would not be there, right? So it is not only the fault of people who rule us. We often think that, okay, these people who are in position of power or something, they would empower me, right? And then, so this is nothing to do with self-governance and self-empowerment. And unless that be happening, we would not make fundamental changes in who we are and, how we do things, basically. So, now let me conclude by saying, of course, there are a lot of people who are younger than you, by the way, right? And now somebody who is like, 16 years old, think 30-year-old are like really gone over the top, right? And they feel they're so old, yuck. They can't be seen around these people, right? But we must understand that the young have a special energy, but this energy is also a desire to grow old as fast as possible, to have the same benefits of age as you see around yourself. Okay. So this the spatial thirst of a young mind is to grow old. And that is so clear when you look at children. And they say, hey, but this guy is enjoying life, and he's bossing around with me, he's giving all the orders. I should be in his place, right? So that the spatial energy of the mind often goes into plotting to become old. Okay, and that's a very dangerous thing indeed, because old have not found solution to these problems. And if we also do not find solution to these problems, then 20 years down the road, we're exactly the same position that we have ever been. So the easiest way to correct a young mind, I just wrote it down yesterday. I thought this was pretty good, is to advertise the advantages of adulthood. These are the neon signs and the plastic of the soul. Okay, this seems a little bit poetic, but you know what I mean, right? So all these advertising which goes on, look, I mean, then how should I be doing it? So if I should be doing it the same way that people have done before and failed, then I've done nothing. Right? So we have gone through the same linear process in doing that. And that is why I was very happy with INYAS. I said, look, this could be a new beginning, right? And first of all, there is no permanent position. So you say, okay, well, you are here for 5 years. As they say, here today, gone tomorrow. But there's some talking about this here today, gone tomorrow with age. But also, this happens with everybody else. So I think INYAS now it has diversity, it has cohesion, which is cooperation that I was talking about. It has energy, it can do things. More or less, it may be away from petty politics, and it has initiatives. So the whole question is, how do you actually perpetuate it? How the sustainability aspects. So what really happens if you were to study the rise and fall of organizations, including empires, the Roman Empire to everything else, you see that their strength actually turns their weakness at some point. And this also happens after after an organization has matured. So early phases of an organization are how do you say, they are driven by charisma of the early leaders, right? Once that charisma goes away and everything is codified, right? Then there are a set of rules and regulations and how we should do it and what we should do or should not do. All of that actually takes precedence. And this is where the true spirit of organization is lost, right? So I think it can be put in actually place some measures which says that look, that this may not happen to INYAS as easily as it may happen. The fossilization of the early ideas and the challenges and so on. Challenges are always internal; they are not external, right? So if somebody goes down, is because of internal challenges that they were not able to surmount at some point. So I mean, let me just conclude by saying that there is also an opportunity to engage. There are many new opportunities to engage for India's. For example, S20 that is being driven by INSA, and there are many. We have identified one overarching theme, which is related to, which is not related to, which is a disruptive science for sustainable development. So basically, disruption is one concept and sustainability another. Often they are seen to be in conflict with each other. Just like sustainable development itself is an oxymoron. If you were to continue with the definition of development that we have in mind, absolutely no way you're looking at temperature change at the end of this century, which is less than 4 degrees Celsius. That's a separate track that we can talk about. But the fact is, that we have the disruptive things are going to happen. You can't stop them. Nobody can stop them. Nobody can control. Chat GPT is coming, whatever is coming, right? And this is going to grow in influence, and all of that is going to happen. So, okay, so how do we marry these two things about disruption and sustainability? By the way, sustainability is not only of environment and resources, sustainability also of values, sustainability of diversity, sustainability of cultural aspects. Every new technology tries to homogenize things because standards and everything else is good for economy. By the same time, what kind of disruptive science actually would help maintain diversity, right? And in fact, have greater impact on economy. And the three sub themes of this are related to clean energy for greener future. The second is universal and inclusive health. What do you mean by universal? Is the last man standing should get that health care, and then the universal and inclusive. Of course, it means that. No, sorry, it wasn't inclusive. Universal is inclusive. Is a universal and holistic. What means that you treat people not by 100 different experts, right, who are cutting up every little part of the body and saying, I'm the doctor for it. The holistic means really you're looking at well-being outside of hospital setting, right? So it has a traditional medicine and wisdom has a role in it. Well-being has a role in it. All the different parallel systems of well-being have a meaning in it, and so on, and on the scientific basis. So, and the third one, which is closer to my heart, is connecting science with society and culture. So these are the three aspects. Okay, and when you think about, I mean, it's not just connecting science on the whole, but disruptive science. Okay, so of course that there are regular models for regular solutions, business as usual models and solutions, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about exponential disruptive changes. How do you actually leverage them for something good, right? And this is what I sometimes, when I used to talk a lot about innovation and startups, I said, look, there are three ways of solving a problem, which in Hindi, I started calling them dhanda, jugaad, and panga. Okay, so dhanda is business as usual, 2% increase, year to year increase. I'm happy with that 5% increase or something like that. Is the continuity. And we need the society, everything needs continuity and balance and stability. So 80% of our life would be that, which is dhanda. Then there is jugaad, which is not really a good solution. It is a good solution to solve problem of today. If I'm going to die at the end of the day, so live another day or die another day. Okay, somehow by jugaad, by hook or by crook, right? But it's not a good solution because it's not scalable, it is not optimal, it is not universally acceptable, and it would not grow. So the final thing, which is panga, which is the disruptive way of solving problems, and we do more of it, maybe 20% of panga all the time, no matter what people like it or not like, and a lot of it would fail. But I was just conclude by so first of all, I'll invite you to participate in this. There are documents and stuff. I think that right, and more will come. I've taken charge of S20 only 2 weeks ago. So many things are proceeding at very fast rate at this point. And so if you want to contribute your thoughts about these themes, uh, please absolutely write them, but in a coherent way, in a paragraph, because the final report is going to be 10 pages. Okay, so it is not producing a PhD thesis, which nobody will read, but it should have something which is impactful, which is insightful, and which exciting, and the people would read it, right? So please have that. I can repeat the three themes. The overarching theme is disruptive science for sustainable development. So these two keywords, sustainability and disruption, operating over three sub-themes. The three sub-themes are universal holistic health, clean energy for greener future, and connecting science with society and culture. Right. So that's what it is. So these are, so we, like I was saying, Panga. Some of you may have known about scientific social responsibility, also fits in there. Um, And so I would, conclude about this Panga business, and this so much needed as a culture coming, for startups, doing startup, doing all of this stuff, not looking for a job necessarily. So I'll conclude by saying that this actually always reminded me of something I read in high school, having holidays I was in IIT, visiting my parents in Udaipur, sitting at the shore of a lake there, a famous lake, watching the sunset there, drawing that sun, um, drinking something which I don't like to disclose now. But okay, I was probably underage at the time. But anyhow, so feeling really inspired by the sunset, which is so multicolored and everything, and reading Hemingway. Right, some of these books they still remain with me. For whom the what is that book? For whom the bell tolls, and in fact, this is about things that we are talking about now. Right? So I remember it said it's better to have loved and lost than not to have loved at all. This is the meaning of disruption. So 80% of the time we would fail. But this is how quality would get generated in the end. Failure is not important. Failure is not forever. But success also is not forever. Okay, so either way, it doesn't really matter very much. And so I think I've rambled on far too long. I can tell more jokes if you like, or we can do some discussion or interaction or whatever, it is called. Um, I mean, what is my summary about INYAS? I think that this is an excellent initiative. Some more young initiatives are being taken in INSA, in particular, creating a category of fellows, which may be called young associate fellows or something like that. Okay. And now, immediately to your mind, some questions will swim. And they say, what is the relation with INYAS? Right? Are we going to create two different kind of people here? The question is very pertinent, and it is very. I mean, when doing this, so let me also give you the background. So we know that all the awards, etc., that were there have been abolished. There were an award called Young Scientist Award of INSA, right? And but anyway, see, you may call it award, you may call it by any name, right? You can call it by the name of fellowship. That's even better, because you see, award is a one-time thing in life. And I don't remember any award that I ever received that gave me happiness more than one day after award is received. Of course, if it comes with good money, that money would last a little bit longer, but not the happiness, because we know that no amount of money, the happiness, they are not really correlated that much in any case. Uh, which is, and I can prove it to you. I may want to discuss that further. Um, about how technology satisfies our needs for happiness or not, in any case, or science or any of that. But the point was, what is the point? The point is that, okay, there is a Young Scientist Award, and they certainly need to recognize, we need to recognize and then, recognize and scout even, younger talent, and make them feel happy. And if that mechanism isn't there, how about having a mechanism which allows greater engagement and interaction, let's say up to age of 40? Exactly what you have in INYAS, maybe 5 years or the age of 40. So you attend the meetings of INSA, you talk to people, do all these things, and maybe also receive fellowship for 1 year, which may be same as monetary award that was there earlier. Okay, so the point is, when you call it award, the objectives should be met. If the objectives are good, if objectives are holistic, and you believe in those objectives, then by whatever structure and mechanism, that you can achieve those objectives, right? And so this is an effort in that particular direction. And coming to the question, INYAS was there, and so were the Young Scientist Award, right? They were in parallel. They are two different things. And whole lot of INYAS members could aspire to be the young associate members and so on, and vice versa also, right? Anyhow, so I think all these things would take a little bit shape, and what would be the impact finally cannot predict in advance about all of this. But the point is, the things must change, and change be the only constant that we welcome with open arms. And to talk about because you're part of INSA, so I can also talk about the future, for example. So always, you see, all the academies, they basically are rooted in recognizing people who create knowledge or excellence in creating knowledge. But have you thought about the fact that we don't actually recognize people who use that knowledge? Okay, so there is everything, like if you have 10 sectional committees, they are basically go by papers, and which is perfectly fine. I got nothing against it, because I'm good at that also. So it's perfectly okay. I have nothing against it, that we look at the creation of knowledge, and we recognize the excellence in creation of knowledge. But does it mean that we should exclude people who have shown leadership in other aspects of science, including using that science for society, for industry, for creating leadership at different levels, policy, or what have you? Oftentimes we think that these things, because we live in a particular kind of thing, our role models and all is only Einstein in our Marilyn Monroe. It is not, anything else, right? So we recognize only one kind of talent, which is we are very good at that. But it does not mean we should exclude other people who are also stakeholders of science, who bring to fore the importance of science. right? So we have created two new committees in INSA. Um, in the same emergency meeting of the Council of INSA, where INYAS were also their budget is enhanced and some other activities are added. I'm happy to report that the two new committees. One of them is called Science in Translation. The other is called Science for Society. Now, this is not diluting science. Quite on the contrary, I pose you the problem that today, if Abdul Kalam was around, can he become a fellow? The answer would be no, right? Because we judge everybody by a particular yardstick, which is very good. I mean, I'm not diluting that yardstick at all, but one is adding something more to that yardstick in order to be more inclusive, in order to be more diverse, and we talk about diversity all the time and so on. So these are some of the things, trailers of things. The world is changing, science is changing, the working of science is changing, publishing business is changing. The very fundamentals of knowledge are changing. 20 years from now, only machines will do research, they will write papers, they will read it. Okay, all of this is going to happen. This is not science fiction. I've discussed it threadbare with the top bosses of publishing houses, Elsevier, ACS, any of them. Right? So we need to get away from our, this sense of possession about what means research. How do we recognize people for their contributions, right? And this is going to hit us very quick and very fast when we are not prepared for it. So so this is about change. It's about adopting that change and welcoming, in fact, and be an active process in that change, and not grudgingly accept the change that comes, but the architect of that change itself. So these are some few keywords and ideas. They are not scratched the surface there in any of these ideas. They require a debate. They require internalization. It's not only debate. It's not roundtable. I've seen so many roundtables and conferences and workshops. People say something, then they go home, and that's the end of it. Okay, it's a whole lot like I say. Hey, it is great to be a soldier. It's great to defend the borders of our country, but not my son, my neighbor's son, right? And so that continues a whole lot. Right. So internalization, understanding, which comes only by understanding truly as to what is, why we should do that. When the 10 commandments, people say, love thy neighbor. Why? I mean, I see no reason. You love thy neighbor because your neighbor is yourself. Okay, so that understanding alone can actually justify the 10 commandments. So I've been saying this for a long time that I was threatening, I was promising to stop. Okay, and I really want to stop now. I'm sorry if I bored you with it, maybe a whole lot. But there are some things we don't talk about. So my only purpose in talking about these things is, of course, we talk about science all the time. We go to our specialty conferences, then we hear a lot of things. What is happening? Who is the big boss of my science now? All this stuff we hear, right? But the fundamentals of science, the culture of science, that we don't in a committed way, in an open and honest way, in a transparent way, there we don't have that time, right? So thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you so much, sir. No wonders people heard you for 3.5 hours, because your talks are actually addictive, they're engaging, and this talk was no different. You really hit upon the right chord of the young and the restless. Everyone listening here would agree to me that the talk was much relevant, aptly supported with examples, with light examples, as well as statistical data. And you really expressed well the experiences gained from sweet 16 to maturer 61. You talked about self-responsibilities and realization, and very importantly, not falling down to negativities and biases, realizing the power within us. You elaborated the understanding of diversity, and the takeaway tagline for me at least was cooperation over competition. Then the nicest thing I found in your talk was jugaad is not sustainable. And then you also mentioned about disruptive science, which was very important for us to get through. And there were a lot many things which, of course, I cannot summarize. You also emphasized on the themes of G20 S20, which is need of the hour. And you concluded by encouraging INYASians, their efforts, and we hope to live up to your expectations. So thank you so much for the nice talk. And I'm sure there must be some questions awaiting. So may I ask you to put forward your questions for sir? Thanks for correcting me.
You have said that just to be polite, to live up to somebody's expectation. I understand that. But even that, if we repeat often enough, we start believing it. So we live up to the expectation of our parents. We live up to the expectation of somebody or other all the time, right? There is no novelty in it. And we must not even repeat this because we start believing it. Really, if we repeat it. It's not a criticism.
No, no,
I understand that because, of course, we just say it. But anyway, right.
The house is open for discussion. Yes, please. Can we have a mic?
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yes. By the way, it reminded me of something somebody once told me, sir, you're not edible. I said, I hope so. Okay, but you said it right. Audible. Okay, go ahead. Right.
May I request you to introduce yourself before putting?
Which years? All my life. Okay. I never had any challenge because whatever I don't overcome, I not considered it to be a challenge. Okay, so it never, no, really, I'm not. I have not plotted my life at all. Okay, it's just going, without any, what do you call, big picture of life. Only thing I had, you see, I was pretty sure in high school, by high school, I was very sure that I wanted to be a teacher. Okay, and why is that? There was a logic to it. The logic was I knew that I cannot live with a boss. I'm serious. Okay, so and nothing that I've experienced in my life has actually proved otherwise. It would be a disaster. Okay, I will be a disaster to live with a boss. Okay, it's not because I'm smart. It's because that's how I am. Right? I cannot, accept authority. So, so it was clear that that was incompatible with who you were. Right? So I decided to be a teacher. Then I went into okay. So my first thing I wanted to do after high school was like philosophy. I took admission in a local university, filled up all the forms and everything without telling my parents. And I got admission. Meanwhile, I got admission in IIT. Now people are saying you would be a fool to not go to IIT and do philosophy. So and they told me very explicitly, they said, if you do philosophy, you become a teacher. But I already decided to be a teacher. Okay, so I said, chalo, we'll do IIT, then become teacher, right? And then by the time I'd gone through IIT, I was in a particular campus and I felt comfortable there. I said, I'll become teacher here, right? And nothing in my life has changed that. Okay, no matter what somebody said, you become this and that. Okay. It's not because becoming this and that is not good. But you have to decide for yourself what you want. Right? So there had never been any challenge. Some people said you cannot do good work here. Somebody said you cannot work in physics. Somebody said something. If I work in physics, if I had failed, that is not a challenge. Okay, I mean, failed means what? I mean, it's just that okay, everybody lives, right? I don't know what actually is meant by challenge. If you can define this a little bit better for me, then you will have answer to your own question. Okay, most of the answers are actually in framing the question itself. It's not in the answer, right? The question, if it is clearly framed, clearly, it will have its own answer embedded in the question. Right? So, what is the challenge? But I think the challenge, maybe for all of us, is to be an independent thinker without hurting people, right? There's a challenge, there's a very deep challenge, and not be influenced by people's opinion, no matter how good they are, no matter how correct they are. I mean, without you, me breaking the law, okay? I think that we can think for ourselves, and do that. I think we'll do something good. But by imitating the people, we cannot do good. By comparing people, you lose what is best in both of them. When you compare A and B, I mean, each one of them have strength, but we're only comparing them on their weaknesses, right? So all of that actually not much meaning, right? It's much meaning for cracking exam and so on, but in life now very much meaning. Also, other challenge is how not to hate your enemy. Okay, I mean, you realize everybody is the same. I mean, the brain, works in the same way. Everybody is trying to do something good. In that process, they may have to hurt you, right? But I mean, in turn, everybody is hurt. In turn, there's nobody in this world who is not hurt, right? And do we take it personally, right? When being hurt, as I said, is it's a complexity of the world, right? It's not personal. Right? Of course, when you quote this kind of dialogue, it is from the Godfather. So it sends chill up and down your spine. You say, hey, it's not personal, it's all professional. You want to kill somebody. There's all nothing personal about it. Right? But I don't mean it in that sense. I mean that one cultivates this equanimity consciously, and that's a challenge. People I don't like. How do I actually get along with them? uh, the people that I consider to be crooks, the people that I consider to be of low ethics and morals, people who are actually out there to hurt you. How do you live, right, with this world without generating negativity? I think that's a challenge. And I think that's not an easy challenge at all. Because it requires constant work. It requires constant course correction. It requires constant meditation on this, if you would. Okay? By the way, I was just quoting today only. I was talking to someone. I said, what is the basics of doing science? Not only science, any worthwhile knowledge system. It was summarized very well by Buddha himself 2,500 years ago. He said, "Believe no one, no matter who said it, no matter if I said it, unless it squares with your own logic and experience." I think since a whole lot of things that we do has become a cult. So we believe in a lot of things, isn't it? I mean, we find comfort in believing in a lot of things, but it's not necessary to believe in them to do good. I think we believe in that just for our psychological security, just as we believe in God or we believe in something, right? I'm not saying God is not real. I'm not saying it's not also unreal. I don't know, right? But the point is that we believe in something without really knowing very much about it, right? We have not questioned it because there is no psychological comfort in questioning. I mean, on a lighter side, very lighter side. Don't take this seriously. If I go to Calcutta and I say Gurudev was not as good a dramatist as he was a poet, how many people will jump at me, right? You see, I mean, so society as a whole don't want you to be uh, in a considered way critique or critical of something, right? I don't mean negativity. I mean recognize a problem and start working to solving it, right? There's no point. I mean, you cannot have sympathy for people who complain all the time, right? Without saying that I'm actually part of the solution rather than part of the problem, right? And whole lot of people, I mean, why is it that it's not good to complain, right? Why is that? I learned it from reading this book, which is called Meditations. It was written by the last Roman emperor called Marcus Aurelius, right? So he is much like Bhagavad Gita because it comes from the battlefield. So the experiences that come from battlefield, they have a different tinge to it. They have a different aroma and flavor to it, right? So there was this famous song in the 80s, "Love is a battlefield" or something. Life is a battlefield, whatever it is. Right? So what is it? So Marcus Aurelius, he summed it up very easily. He said, "Look, in those days, a lot of people believed in gods, right? And they say if you complain, you are complaining against the gods who they know better than you do about what is good for you, right? But this is actually taking to the extreme. But there are many ways to say, look, there is not complain is not the solution. We understand that complain is not the solution. Understanding and working on that understanding to provide a solution is the only solution there is. In complaint, we are hoping that God up there or the top leader or somebody will solve our problems, right? We are just kind of giving that responsibility from ourselves to somebody else. And this is how we think about empowering or empowerment. Is no, I mean, somebody complaining about director. I've never found any director who would stop my work. And I say it very clearly, right? It may impede a little bit. Maybe I don't, you see, if I don't get a lab, people say, I didn't get a lab for 10 years when I joined IIT. I changed my area of research. I became a theoretician. Okay. I said, I can't do it. In those days, DST used to give 2 lakh projects. And they were in my department, there were 21 faculty members and 6 PhD students. You would not even imagine today. That's why I'm saying so important to have an inter-age dialogue. Okay, because people not understand this at all today. And they say, how, if I worked with one PhD student at a time for 10 years, and it was the happiest days of my life doing research. Just because you have a corporatized your research by having 50 people work for you, it doesn't mean you will get the joy of research ever. Okay. Uh, this is so true. But anyway, I have nothing against corporatized research also. I mean, it works for some people, it does produce some good research and so on. But all I'm saying is, look, we cannot complain. And anybody who was saying, look, MIT is much better than IIT and why are we? I said, look, that is true. But why don't you go to MIT? Why are you complaining here? Right? So, I mean, I think people, the best that they can choose for themselves. And if they cannot choose any better than what they are, where they are, then they have no right to complain about it. I mean, I'm taking an extreme position. Of course, complain as an outlet for our frustration serves a useful purpose as gossip and all that stuff, right? The point is, how seriously do I take it? Do I get affected by my own complaints about the world? Or I just take it as a mechanism to purge my frustrations and my feelings, which is perfectly okay. That's why we go to a shrink, and we this and we talk openly and say, hey, what is bothering me and stuff like that, right? Perfectly okay. But the point is, how seriously do I take that in my life, right? So complaint is something which we have not understood the mechanism of the world and myself and everything around me, and I just find myself in a place I can't negotiate. On the other hand, so this is related to question that you asked. Okay, it's not something I'm making a challenge, right? What is the challenge? The challenge is to do the best under the constraints and circumstances that I have, which I cannot alter. Okay, if I can alter them, please work on it and alter it, right? Everybody complains, they say, "Aisa ho raha hai, waisa ho raha hai." It's not happening, that's not happening. Some things I don't control. But what about things that I control? Am I working on them? Right? And what is it I have control over? At least I have the most control over myself. I don't have that control over you, right? So instead of complaining about you, I should be working on me, right? And so that often doesn't happen, and that's the challenge.
Your answer gives a lot of nice advices and suggestions for us. More questions, please?
All
Please
right,
raise your hand.
Yeah, I'm Kirtiman. I'm from BITS
Yeah.
Pilani. Yeah. Yeah. I'm Kirtiman. I'm
You are
from
a
BITS.
backbencher.
Yeah, backbencher. So, my question is, how do you deal with the challenges that are related to doing disruptive science? You mentioned that now it is in the agenda of INSA as well. But apparently, if you are actually doing something or if you got something which is really disruptive, it does not go with the wave of what is the trend. It would not be accepted in publications. The agencies would not fund it because they say that the idea is too outcast, and they would say that maybe you need some more substantial evidence so that we can get. So I think, but how do you deal with it? Like if you have got something really out of the box, do you, how do you actually go for the publication? How do you get the funding for it? Yeah, what are the, how do you deal
No,
with
no,
that?
I think it's like this. If it's truly disruptive, it's a new idea. People will accept it sooner or later, maybe sooner. Okay, there is absolutely no, but of course, the incremental ideas disguised as disruptions. People get a little bit worried about it. In fact, I remember I had started a new program in SERB, which is exactly this: high risk, high gain or reward or something it was called. Now, when we started this scheme, the whole idea I had is that let people write proposals which have a high risk involved in it. But if they succeed, then the returns are also high, proportion to the risk that you take. Unfortunately, for several years, it received proposals which were high risk only because they had a lot of budget. So people thought high risk means, hey, let's apply 10 crores and it fails, okay, 10 crores you lose, right? Really. And it's of course nothing to do with that. So the whole thing about high risk is also culturally driven. I was once a member of European Research Commission, which funds a lot of research. This is about 12 years ago. And in particular, I was part of this committee, which actually considers nothing but only disruptive proposals. Okay, so if you cannot answer the question about what is disruptive about it, it will not be funded. So it was upfront. It was, in fact, this idea in SERB was inspired by that. But it's wholly cultural. So what I said is, you see, also cultural means what is the opposite of what you're saying about disruption, right? The point is, if you have worked on a problem or an area for 7 years, you can actually see what paper you will write next. Okay, you don't need to do any research. You only do research to fill up some data points. But the conclusion is a foregone conclusion. Okay, you can write the whole paper, in fact. Okay, and you know that whatever experiments which are being done or simulation being done will provide the XY graph. But you know what is going to come out of it, right? There's nothing, no surprises, so to say. And so when that happens, it is time to quit that area. Why? Because there is no personal growth in that area after some time, right? In fact, yesterday only I was discussing this guy, Ambuj Sagar. He's head of policy department in IIT Delhi. He may be deputy director. I didn't know him in that role. We were just drinking in Khan Market. So, anyway, whatever happens. So he was saying, you're a material scientist, right? I heard you in such and such conference. So then I recalled, in fact, that I did recall that I have never had any fixed identity about things, right? So its identity is given by other people to you. Not, I never thought about, hey, am I a chemical engineer? Am I a physical chemist? Am I a material scientist? Am I experimentalist? Am I a theorist? Is it condensed matter physics? What is it? All the labels actually have no meaning at all. You have a problem, it's exciting problem, you want to solve it. That's it. So this guy was saying, oh, I didn't know. And before I start work in IIT Kanpur, I was actually a biomedical scientist. So I had learned surgery on rabbits. I was finding stem cells for the cornea. But then I came to Kanpur and there was no possibility of doing that kind of research, as I explained. No PhD student will do it and find a job in chemical engineering. So then I said, hey, what is it we can do? But there were computers, so you can do theory, right? And in theory, what, look around some problem, and I got some good ideas. So we could publish. In that phase of my life, people thought I was a physicist. And so we published about more than 12 PRLs in 4 or 5 years, right? Because I didn't know about PRL. So you see, if you don't know about something, you would not be intimidated by that memory or what it means, right? So now my physicist friends would say, hey, this is very difficult. You got lucky, they would say. And I totally agree with that, right? But it's not so much luck. See, what happens is people are looking for new ideas. Now, if I grew up in that particular area with my physicist friends, then I would look at that problem through a particular lens, right? And through that particular lens, there would never be any novelty. And I would not be able to compete with those people who are working that area for 20 years and they have the right tools, right? I have no tools. Okay. I never had any tools from any area at all. Okay. I don't know as much as I don't know whatever they do physicists, right? I don't know any of the things in which I have worked as a deep background. But what excites me is a new idea. Okay. So I say, hey, why can't it be like this? And maybe, nobody, said, oh, by the way, we know many of these things which are measured. It just occurred to me, like, charge on electron, and what do you call Millikan's experiment or something, cloud chamber, right? If you were to look at these experiments which are done over years and decades, right? They actually all converge to a particular value, which is considered now the modern value for electronic charge, right? But then somebody looked at it very carefully, that the first experiments measured this, then it constantly goes down with more and more experiments and reaches asymptotically the correct value. The people asked, they said, but these first 5 experiments or next 5 experiments, based on the setup that they had, could they have not got the right value in the first trial? The answer is yes, but they didn't want to deviate too much from the earlier experiments, right? They said we will be rejected, right? This is what the same gentleman asked there, right? So partially the answer to that question is, indeed, this is how it happens in science. Incremental changes. Everybody is afraid to put out their view as to, see, we went from, let's say, 3 experiments here, and suddenly with a new apparatus, you went down a whole lot and here. Then people say there must be something wrong with your experiments, right? They won't say what was wrong, with the first 3 experiments, right? So this bias is there, bias to confirm things which are widely held to be true, right? Science itself has many central dogmas, and every aspect, every sub area of science has their own dogmas, right? But those dogmas are never questioned, because to question that would mean that you will not publish your paper, as you correctly pointed out, right? But you may get lucky sometimes, isn't it? And it is so self-evident that something has happened there which should not have been there. And anyway, it was a new way of doing things. See, sometimes disruption does not mean that you challenge the old. A whole lot of problems come when you want to challenge the old and demolish it before building. One should not go that path. Okay, because that's very slow and painful. Because there would be vested interest. There would be a whole lot of resistance to be overcome. So there's an old couplet of Kabir, who was a poet. He said, "This world is like a very dense procession passing through a narrow street. Find your way and short circuit." Okay, so it is like you have a wall. Now there are 2 ways to get around it: get a big hammer, break the wall, or climb it, or go around it. Okay, so it is metaphorically. I mean, no, right? So so it's best not to actually worry in demolishing things and waste your energy forever. Okay, that's something negative. And if you offer an alternative which is obviously better, far superior, and without actually saying anything bad about what actually is there, it would be more acceptable to the people. I mean, there's some psychological stuff, right? Yeah. Is it and to do incremental things, it requires same energy and time and money, and then to do disruptive things also. It's just a question of saying, do I want to do this? I want to do that, right? Now, of course, 90% of all our work is incremental. That is how, because, because there's okay, one has to get tenure, one has to get a job, one has to get promotion, and all of that yardsticks for them remain pretty constant over time, right? I mean, we talk so much about being interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. Now, here is a guy who did, let's say, a BSc, then he did BTech, then MTech in something else, PhD in something else, postdoc in another thing. I asked all the IIT directors, I say, you going to hire this guy? Then, this is right after they give lecture about being interdisciplinary, right? Um, and he's good. I mean, he is better than, above average people that we hire in different departments, right? Well, say, no, yeah, no, I really would like to hire this guy, but department will not support. Okay. So departments, of course, will not support because we are all slave to the same mentality. We say, look, to put it crudely, there's an old saying, Radha mere angan mein hi nacheegi, right? We see this sense of possession and centrality of who I am and my knowledge base. The whole universe is just centered around me only, right? They say, oh, but if you're not doing this, then you're doing something worthwhile, right? So this is because of insecurities in people's mind, which we superimpose on the rest of the world, and we don't accept. But you see now, by understanding, right? By understanding, what is understanding? Where do the disciplines come from? Are they God given? Are they 10 commandments? Are they written on stone? No, these disciplines came in response to the needs of industrialization and society and the jobs. As the job shift, so do disciplines. I mean, tomorrow, if somebody say, look, there is money in the statistical mechanical theories of garbage collection, you will have that, right? There is no problem with it at all, right? So it's nothing sacrosanct in the world anymore. It's not knowledge, right? So these things happen, okay, and we can move beyond it. And moreover, these things happen, the fragmentation of knowledge for undergraduate teaching or ease of undergraduate teaching and acquiring an identity through that and saying I am eligible for this kind of job, right? So it has a purpose, but it has a limited purpose as far as research and creation of new knowledge is concerned, right? Very limited purpose. So that is not done by, good new knowledge is not created by remaining within the boundaries of discipline. Okay, I can publish 700 papers. That is not a problem, right? Sometimes I was going crazy and I thought, hey, let's see how many papers you can publish, maybe 40 paper a year, something like that, right? But the end of it all, what does it matter? It means nothing. Others will also get the promotion at the same time. Okay, you publish 70 papers, 700 papers mean nothing. Okay, it's just what it means is that whether at the end of it, have you been excited? Have you truly thought that this was something worthwhile? It was worth your effort and your intelligence, right? Um, if I were to look at my own papers, maybe 400, I could do better, but I got sidetracked for last 8 years doing no research. Okay, but I could do better. And then first 10 years of my life, I was working with one PhD student, which may be considered adverse situations for publishing paper. Anyway, so, but 400 papers, but I said, look, I mean, I think I was excited maybe about 70 of those, right? And so I said, if I had not published the rest of it, there's a clear answer to that dilemma. The clear answer is if you don't publish more papers, your PhD students will suffer, right? They will not find a job. Okay, they'll say, hey, 5 paper ही publish किया है क्या? What is this, right? 50 होना चाहिए. Right. So then you see, we bring certain values of our society and our academia, and because people don't know how to judge better, they go by, these norms which are there for hiring people and so on, right? So while we do a lot of lip service to many things, we can't really live them because we're not ready as a society and through cultural aspect to actually live it, right? At the same time, if I'm a director, I cannot say interdisciplinary is not good. I cannot say that also, but I can't implement also. So I mean, this is a very strange situation to be in, right? Now, okay, having stated the problem,
We have stated the problem. Everybody state problem with great clarity in this world. But the solution to the problem, especially if it involves some sacrifice on my part, that is very hard, right? So it comes to saying, yeah, I will think about it when I become professor, right? But you're not going to think about it when you become professor if you're not thought about it when you were assistant professor. I'm absolutely clear about it. And so there are people who become professor, then they stop doing any work at all, right? And so it's very difficult to explain that the work is actually a privilege. It is not something which is, is a labor. Okay, so it is a privilege. People who have work to do in life are privileged, right? And people don't realize that. So the whole definition of people who consider themselves to be smart, they say I am a smart guy because I can short circuit the system. Without doing any work, I can get promoted, right? So now there's a greater acceptance of that behavior by the society, of that definition of street smart or smartness, then everything gets distorted, in the process. But now I have not given any clear answer to your query because there is no clear answer to your query. So you take your chance. You want to do disruptive work, be my guest. Okay, you don't want to do it, you are still welcome. Okay, so nobody's going to bother about it in your whole life. Okay, it is what you choose to do, right? And if you say, look, the price you're going to pay for it is too high, you make your choice. You don't do it, right? All I'm trying to say is that are we making the right choices? Is there, 20% people at least can make more disruptive choices, take risk and fail. Okay, there is no shame in failure. There is shame in incremental success, I would think. My way of thinking. It's not necessarily true, right? But saying, when you have achieved also something, what is it that you have achieved? And if you say answer is not very much, then why worry about it? But we worry about it because of habit, because this is habit forming. It is so difficult to let go of not publishing. It is, by habit. If my standards are 5 papers a year, then if I do one, I would be totally miserable. Okay, so this is totally habit forming, just like any drug. And so it is our choice, but it's often not our choice. And because my sense of self worthiness comes from this activity that I call publishing papers, right? Otherwise, I don't have self esteem, and all of this gets too distorted in the end. I'm unable to entangle my self esteem with my publishing papers, right? There's also a flip side to it, which means I insist on self esteem by doing nothing. Okay, that also happens. Okay, a whole lot of people think, oh, because we derive pleasure from other aspects of our lives totally. For example, doing petty politics and hurting people, and we say, hey, I'm doing something, right? And I'm a success in what I'm doing, right? So my psychological satisfaction may come from those activities which are not to be my primary activities if I have chosen this particular profession. But it's so true because sometimes our social networks, they provide us with all the satisfaction that we want, and so there is no hunger left. And people say, hey, but I got good friends, I'm drinking tea or beer sometime, and and I'm criticizing people, and this all looks very good, right? And so if that satisfaction, if we have exchanged satisfaction for something else, then it would be very hard. And but in the heart, everybody knows that this is a failure, and that's what makes people bitter. Okay, is what makes it. So I kept saying, I have observed it in my life. The brighter the mind, more bitter that mind would be after not succeeding. And the corollary of that is there would be channeled negatively. Okay, saying maybe I didn't get it, but I let nobody get it. Okay, and I would pull everybody down. Okay, and I'll make sure this university goes to dogs. Okay, and whatever, I mean, this is, is jilted lovers paradox. Okay, so it's a love-hate relationship. What I didn't get, I would not let anybody get, and so on. And it happens more often than we think. Okay, people are not evil. Okay, it's just the way it is, right? Um, it can only be circumvented, surmounted by understanding and by nothing else. Yeah. Right. I know that in Facebook. Each question worth 5 rupees. Into? Yeah, yeah, right. Sure.
So how to bridge that particular thing, the acceptance, especially, yeah, like by.
This is very simple. You bridge it when you are 60 years old. You make sure that the committees you make has this balance, right? Now there would be some opposition to it. There would be some. You may not even, I mean, if you don't look deeply, you will not find, because find meaning, that people who are more in age, maybe they are more well known, they are more visible, because people have been watching them for 20 years, right? And so people may not know the right candidate. It's quite possible, but it means that you have the desire to do it. So everything comes from the fact that you think, you are convinced that this has to be done, right? It may require a little extra effort, and it may require to go out on a limb sometimes, right? So I'm giving an example about how it happens. So I started teaching fluid mechanics 2 years after I joined. Fluid mechanics is one of these very dreaded subjects, and it's a what is called a core course. Core course means, everybody does it regardless of which department you're in. Now I want all my courses to be open book. Today it can be open internet, Google, everything, chat, GPT, whatever, right? The whole point is that you cannot, I mean, this problem solving is not an activity which is based on memory. Okay. So therefore we must have open book to solve problems, right? When real life, nobody will say, no, no, close your books and solve the problem, right? They'll not happen, right? So we should have that problem solving approach from the beginning. But now there was a problem. The problem I had to solve was that all my tutors for the instructor, all my tutors for the course, I've been teaching that course for 20 years. And they said, but if people don't remember Navier-Stokes equation, how they know fluid mechanics, right? And so it was an uphill task to convince people that knowing Navier-Stokes equation or memorizing them is not fluid mechanics. Okay, because they are always available at your beck and call, right? But do you understand that, how to apply this Navier-Stokes equations, right? But what I'm talking about is the resistance that happens through age and fossilization of my experiences. Okay, so what I thought was the right way to do it, and I must continue to do it, right? Which is why I'm saying that, if you want to change anything, you have to be the change. Yes.
But just to add to it, this is like an individual or subjective
No.
thing. Say as a
Yeah,
science
I
academy
totally,
or
I
as
totally
a.
understand. I totally understand your question. So there's what I said, the top-down change and the bottom-up change. The top-down change is a cosmetic change. Okay, so while I'm nothing against it, and we have been making schemes in DST wherever. Hopefully, we do something in INSA, right? Nothing against it, but I'm saying something we are missing in all of this equation of change, and that so we you see there is a basic principle of science. We say if you have proved something 10 times, there is no point proving it 11 times. It's better to actually disprove it in even little something, right? So I am saying that those things we have understood, that through scheme, through top down, right? That there is, some change that can be brought up. The real change happens not by that process. This is a what you call jugaad. Okay. So this is a jugaad change, because somehow we want to get there fast and we want to do that. So, okay, schemes and stuff like that, right? And it does benefit the overall direction of change. No doubt about it. But shouldn't we, each one of us who is interested in this change at a fundamental level, be able to work for it? And you said individual. But the point is, you see, there is an individual, but the collective is also an individual. Okay, because everybody has fears, everybody is ambitious, everybody is competitive, everybody has all these things which are individual, but they also collective. So this is the universality of human mind. You see, a lot of people say we have changed a lot in 2000 years, but have we? So we have changed and also not changed. It's like the river, same and not the same, right? So now we were fighting wars 2000 years ago. We are fighting wars now. So what has changed? What has changed is the technology. Okay, so the externals have changed, right? And they will keep changing. But the fact that, there are certain things we need to do that will not change. Is the tools of the trade that could change, right? So should we work on fear or should we work on the tools of fear? We need to work on both. Maybe minimize the destruction which comes from fear by changing the tools of fear. Like, okay, instead of atom bomb, is it better to fight with sword? There is some kind of answer, right? Now, to address this issue at a fundamental level, is to say, where does fear come from? What is it that you need to do to address it? And that can only be done as an individual. So now also what happened? There are two different mechanisms of change, and the spinodal mechanism and nucleation and growth, right? So this is true not only in science, but in societal change. So nucleation growth is a mechanism in which you need minimal number of dissatisfied people. Okay, which are saying, okay, 1,000 fellows, 100 people not very, good with this, right? So that if there's a critical nucleus of dissatisfaction and clear understanding, this may grow. But if it is less than critical number, it will always keep dissolving and the fluctuation would never grow, right? Uh, Second thing is spinodal decomposition, spinodal process, which means that this is at the verge of instability, that every infinitesimal spark, it's like working on a keg of dry powder, right? And that this would explode, right? So to understand both of these mechanisms of change and to leverage them in appropriate context is what brings the change. And also to understand, I'll repeat again, the top-down change and the bottom-up change, not bottoms-up change. So, I used to work in nanotechnology at some point, and so there are two different ways of nanofabrication: the top-down and the bottom-up. Right, the same thing, isn't it? Self-assembly, bottom-up, and all the machine tools are top-down, right? But a whole lot of people, they told me, they said I work in bottoms-up. I said, yeah, I also work in bottoms up, but that's when I'm in a bath, right? So, you feel some interesting substance and gulp it down. That's called bottoms up. So, but see, so everybody discusses the mechanism of top-down change. It's not because it of secondary importance. I want to touch upon the bottom-up aspect of change only because people are not paying enough attention to it. So meaning of Swaraj is not simply to get rid of one set of lords, but, but not to perpetuate them, not to replace them by other set of lords, right? And so, but we don't pay attention to it because it's harder. Because it requires that each one of us sacrifice something. And so while, one sees that people have a lot of sense of privileges, but very little sense of responsibility. In general, I'm saying, right? More or less. So everybody say, why I'm not, professors, why they are not paid well, stuff like that, right? I'll tell you a lot of experience in that. One time I had, we organized a Nobel laureates symposium in Ahmedabad. And then somebody told me, this guy want to talk to you. He's a Nobel laureate. He comes around often visiting India. And he's coming very aggressively towards me. His body language is very hostile. Comes very close and says, I have heard that you are not funding science. I was a little bit taken aback. I was thinking, well, whatever money you have, of course, funding science. I mean, I can't create more money out of thin air. That was my thought. But I was got thinking. I said, somebody is feeding this guy, right? He's saying that to explain my failure, I am actually telling this guy that, look, if I had funding, I would also be a Nobel laureate. I'll be just like you, right? So, which is not true, of course. But we all try to explain away our failures in every possible way, except where the buck stops, which is with me primarily, right? So this is the difference between the top down and bottom up. To see the same evil in the world that is there in myself, right?
Thank
So now, I would not completed the story about the Nobel laureate, right?
Actually, I was going to ask a second question also.
Yeah, yeah, but there's still time for dinner. So,
Shall we continue with the dinner?
so now what happened? So I immediately recognize the fact that whole lot of people badmouth their own country, their own society, their own failure. We do that very easily, right? And it's not that he's going to solve this problem. No, not at all. He has no solution. But he just, he's saying, okay, he's like that, right? So, okay, I took stock of the situation and I told you that I'm not intimidated by is a Newton himself may turn up or Einstein may turn up. I have respect for them. But so here's what I told him. I said, look, Mr. So-and-so. I didn't say doctor. I didn't say professor. I said, Mr. So-and-so, maybe you know little something about the science that you do, but you know nothing about the things you're talking about here. So he was immediately, his body posture changed. And I said, maintain a little distance. We'll sit down like friends. I'll explain to you. Okay, your question and the answer for it, right? We parted as friends. Okay. But the whole point is that, we have lots of weaknesses. Now, some of them come from colonial times. We lack confidence, right? We don't lack intelligence. And this is one of the reasons that disruptive things are not undertaken as much as that we are capable of undertaking them, right? See, in a whole lot of cultures, people say, look, you may be stupid, but don't mumble. We are other way around. Okay, so, I mean, the guy who is really on top of the knowledge pyramid, but he's not confident. Okay, and see, this lack of confidence is what stops people from driving into converting their knowledge into opportunities. So we want a job. We don't want disruption. We don't want all this startup business and all that. Now it's picking up very good. So the generation that you see today is far more confident than has gone before. But there was a time when we are taken in by the color of the skin. I still see advertisements about seeking spouse, right? Is it fair and lovely or something like that, right? We are not comfortable with the skin color. We are not comfortable in our skin. Why is that important for science? I mean, have you asked this? I think this is it's not the training that I received to be successful in science. It is actually my culture which is responsible. Now people keep asking, so I mean, can we create Nobel laureates? What happens if we pump in more money? Would there be Nobel laureates? Right? See, look, if you are doing something, suppose you are pumping X amount of money and the outcome is this. Okay. If you pump in 2x amount of money, the outcome will be 2x of what we have now, which is also nothing. As far as the disruption is concerned. So to repeat the same mistake and expect a different outcome is not scientific. Okay, which basically it indicates the fact that something else is required. And what is that something else? A whole lot of time you say, I mean, at least a lot of people think that there is a weakness in our science. And why they think that? They think that because they say, hey, the fruits of our science are not reaching the society, which is true. Maybe they don't have as much big an impact on economy, right? So we say our science is weak, but this is a wrong argument, totally, right? Why is it a wrong argument? because it's not the weakness in creating science which is a problem. It is the use of science which is a problem, right? And these two are totally different ecosystems. So you'll be barking up the wrong tree by saying that our scientist and science is weak. It is a translation of that science, which may be done by policies, which may be done by regulations, which is done by industry, which is done by startups, by NGOs. All of that is a weak link. And so therefore that science does not reach. So basic weakness in fundamental science we have is quality. Applied science weakness is that lack of direction and relevance. And the major weakness is the uptaking of that science and doing something with it. And I don't think scientists don't think that this is their job actually to do this. But this is actually a self-serving opinion because we know that academy would not take us as fellows if we only worry about the uptake of science. Okay. So it's a vicious cycle. Okay. And who's going to break it?
That's what the yardstick is one, I think that's something I think stop the
Yeah.
doing the disruptive science.
Yeah.
Because there are certain parameters on which we are
We
judged.
are off the record
General.
now. No? Are we doing? Are we taping this? Or something,
Actually,
right?
Like,
actually, going by the time, we need to stop streamlining.
Because if you are
So-
recording it, I can't say certain jokes. Yeah.
So can
Okay,
we
but
stop
never
the
mind.
streamlining? And before that, we would like to present a token of thanks to Professor
Second
Sharma.
question about what?
Sir, would you like to continue question over the dinner or?
Are you hungry for knowledge or food?
Both. To be honest, both.
so,
This time I'll be
Okay.
super quick in answering.
so I was going to ask
Yeah.
about your